Today we have what I am calling the law school smackdown. And so I have invited 5 of my former students. So these are all my former students in various capacities. And I'm going to get emotional because I love all of them so much. They're such wonderful students. Sorry, that was not supposed to happen. Okay, so some of them chose to go to law school and some of them chose not to. And I imagine there's a number of you who are facing that identical decision. So I thought it would be useful to have people who are very recently, who made that decision very recently, present their perspective. And that might help you make your decision. So I will briefly introduce them, and then I'll let them talk more about what they're doing, all the really interesting things they're doing. So we'll start over here. We have Jacqueline Smith, who is a second-year law student at BYU Law. Then we have Matt Easton, who is a first-year PhD student in political science at Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley. Then we have Connor Kreutz, who is works for a business strategy startup in Los Angeles, followed by Miranda Hatch, who is a third-year law student at BYU. And then, last but not least, Taylor Peterson, who is a second-year law student at BYU. Okay, so if you're okay with that, you're welcome to take your masks off so they can hear and see you. And so what I'd like to do is first let's just go down the line and have each of you tell us in less than 5 minutes kind of what you're currently doing, how you kind of came to the decision of what you are, like how you kind of arrived at the path that you're in. And then once we get through kind of general introductions, I'll have some questions for you, and then I think we can reserve a lot of time for a kind of back and forth between the students and the panel. So grab a microphone, because we're also recording this. I should have told you this. So for posterity, so make sure you have a microphone when you're talking, okay? And I will grab that microphone so I can pepper you with questions as you go. So go ahead.
This is fun. Like Dr. Barber said, my name is Jacqueline. I am a 2L over at BYU Law. I'll start with what I'm doing because that takes less time to explain. I'm planning on being a trial attorney. I am interning at the Public Defender's Office this summer, planning on working at a Public Defender's Office after I graduate for at least a couple of years, and then might stay there, might do something else, really just depends on how I'm feeling financially. Other than that, I'm in school. I work for a firm part-time in Provo. As far as how I decided to go to law school, I figured out I wanted to do law, honestly, before I figured out I wanted to do political science for my undergrad. I grew up around a lot of attorneys. I was familiar with kind of the work, at least for small firm attorneys. My dad is a criminal defense attorney, and I have some uncles who do things. So I saw what they did. I saw their lifestyle. I realized I really like to hear myself talk, and that being an attorney is a good job for that. And it seemed like a good fit for me. This really isn't a particularly, it was a relatively easy decision for me because I knew I liked the work and I liked what I could do with that work. I wasn't super familiar with what I could do with, a JD before I started law school. But as I've been in law school, I've realized, for example, our criminal justice system, very complicated, rather problematic for a lot of groups of people, and I want to be able to help with that. There's good options for, honestly, whatever you want to do. I got a piece of advice from a couple of people in my undergrad who said to not go to law school unless you think you would enjoy being a lawyer, and I think that is a very good piece of advice, with the caveat that you don't have to be a lawyer if you go to law school. It's the easiest route. You go, you get your JD, you get your job. Well, you take the bar as well. but a law degree can open a lot of doors. If you're considering law school, make sure you think you would enjoy being a lawyer. That's the biggest piece of advice I would give. But also know that a JD does not lock you into being a lawyer. Anything else?
I think that's great.
Neat.
Nice. Hi everyone, my name is Matt Easton. As Dr. Barber said, I have just started my PhD in political science. So I did not go to law school. And, sorry, no, thank goodness.
It's exhausting, that's another thing you need to know.
Yes. I was a political science undergrad, probably like many of you, I think, social sciences, something like that. And I was like, well, everyone's going to law school. I guess I should probably go to law school too. So these 4 people, all of us took like an LSAT prep class together, paid the like $1,200, studied vigorously. And then I realized, like, do I even want to become a lawyer? Like that thing? And I thought.
After he got the best score.
Yeah. And I was like, well, actually, no, it sounds a little intense and maybe not super fun. And then I realized that there's actually a lot that I could do just with the political science degree that I had. And I had this mindset for so long where I was like, well, I don't know what I want to do, but a JD is really transferable, and so I'll just become something else. But like, I don't need to take that JD step to get to that point. So after I graduated, I ended up working in campaigns for a little bit. Had a lot of fun doing that. Switched over to a tech company. I worked for about a year, and now I'm getting my PhD, which is going to open a lot more doors, hopefully. So for any of you who might be on the fence, be like, well, maybe I just want to go to law school because it's like an answer. I want to let you know that there are so many other options that like are a lot more fun than what it sounds like they've had to do in law school. And they pay you to go to grad school. I don't have to pay. So just a couple ideas to throw out there. And we can talk more as we go. But if you're on the fence, I'll do whatever I can to help you feel like you do not have to go to law school.
Alrighty. As Matt said, I also toiled in the LSAT prep class with these people. Didn't take the LSAT. Decided partway through this was not for me, at least not at this time. And I instead, being very averse to closing doors to anything, joined a management consulting firm called McKinsey & Company. And I spent 2 years working in management consulting, which is basically the best way to sell out of political science, I guess. I wanted something that was still kind of problem-solving focused, and that would let me sort of, I'm still really interested in the public sector, and so working at McKinsey let me work somewhere that was public sector adjacent. I actually did most of my work for governor's offices and also health departments for state governments. So everything from helping them design plans to improve vaccine access and stand up testing sites when COVID started to thinking about economic recovery at the state level. So did a lot of work around the country with that. And then after 2 years at McKinsey, I was a little bit tired of working 15, 16-hour days. And so I decided I was going to take a little break, and I joined a venture-backed startup based in LA. And at the time, we were 15 people, and now we're 40. So I've been doing that, doing business strategy for them. It's been really cool. And I will say I've not fully closed my mind off to grad school options, but I'm really glad that I went right into the workforce after graduation, and happy to talk more about that as we go.
Cool. I'm Miranda, so I was also a political science undergrad. I double majored with Latin American studies, which I think kind of shaped my decision as well. I think for me, deciding to go to law school was a lot of trial and error of doing different internships or different classes and kind of finding out what I didn't like. So I did an internship with the government, with the State Department, and although it was an incredible summer, I realized I did not want to work for the bureaucracy and didn't want to have to be a peg, I wanted to be able to have more impact in my work. And then I did some data analysis work for a while for some professors, and then even after graduating, and I realized, okay, this is fine, but I'm not excited to wake up in the morning and do data analysis. And then kind of the third thing to cross off was like I'd considered getting a PhD. I think through doing my capstone and doing more research, I realized that I didn't actually enjoy doing the research, that I liked the writing, I liked the problem solving, but I wasn't that good at like coming up with these really cool theses. And then I also took quite a few pre-law classes in undergrad. So I don't know if Professor Christensen still teaches his like law, constitutional law classes. I took those, and they really well like mock what a law school class is, maybe even a little harder.
It's harder than law class.
Yeah. And then I also took there's like a pre-law kind of like center on campus, and they offer a lot of classes there. And every single one that I took, I really enjoyed and realized that, you know, the skills that I'd gained through political science and Latin American studies, kind of research and writing, would kind of translate really well to law school. And at the time, because of my Latin American studies degree, I went into law school thinking I wanted to do immigration law. So I spent my first summer working at an immigration nonprofit in New York, well, virtually, because it was COVID summer. But then kind of through that experience, through the people I met and networked with, through talking with professors, I actually am going to work at a firm out in New York called Cleary Gottlieb. They specialize in international law and specifically Latin American corporate international law. So I will specifically be working on like restructuring, so bankruptcy of Latin American companies. And I feel like it has been just the perfect kind of, I get to write and kind of use this business and analytical skills you learn in law school, as well as oral advocacy. And to me, I feel like everything I loved from poli-sci was really exemplified, has been exemplified in my law school experience. So I'm team law school over here.
Okay. I just want to say, like, it's really cool to be up here with this panel of people. If you don't know, Matt Easton's kind of like a living legend in the BYU Political Science Department. And Connor's trying to downplay that he just went to this firm called McKinsey, which is like a huge deal coming out of political science. And same with Miranda, who's going to this massive international law firm in New York, which is like really hard to do. You have to be like top 5, 10% of your class at BYU Law to do that. So bunch of really impressive people up here. Also, Connor was my TA in 328, and so was Miranda. And Miranda was my 200 TA. And I look about I'm like really embarrassed about that time because I wrote some horrendous papers. Like I think I got a C+ in 200. It was bad. But you can turn things around and learn to like write.
I
so.
remember you being really good at 328. So
Oh, thanks.
Taylor was good at 328. He was one of my TAs. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm also team law school, as you may have guessed, repping the BYU law sweater, which you can order yourself actually on the BYU bookstore. You don't have to be a law student to buy it, so it's $20. Small plug, shameless. I was one of those kids who I always thought I wanted to go to law school. Like some people say that, but like I just had no imagination or creativity to do anything else. And my dad was a lawyer, and I grew up on Law and Order, so I had this completely unrealistic view of how law works. So I went into political science thinking it was just gonna be a stepping stone, and I like really liked a lot of the stuff I ended up doing. Like 328 was great, opened a ton of doors. I got to do some really cool research with Dr. Barber, got to participate in a really cool research group with CSED my senior year, which was super fun, doing some more research there. Got really involved with different publications from the BYU Pre-Law Review to the BYU Political Review. So definitely improved on that writing from the ones that Miranda originally saw my sophomore year. I had a quasi-major crisis because I was doing really bad at the LSAT at the time, and I remember sitting in Dr. Barber's office and being like, should I get a PhD? Like, I don't want to do this anymore. But things turned out all right, and whenever people talk about the political science program, I always try and emphasize how great like the data program is in political science. Like the BYU one is like top tier in terms of like opening doors in that sense, as opposed to just about like, it's up there at least with like other top political science programs, especially with the data options that you can do starting with 328. As for me with law, I will be in Salt Lake this summer, which is a little bit of a bummer because I swore I would never live in Utah, but it's with a big firm up there, so I'm really excited for that, called Kirkland & Ellis. But yeah, I mean, I think a JD is really cool in the sense that, like Jacqueline said, it opens a lot of doors more so than it closes, and it's one of the few grad degrees that I think can do that. And you've probably heard that before. But even going into law school, like I've had my eyes open to like all the different fields you can go into with a JD. And I find myself more on the corporate/transactional side of things now. So I find myself in corporate finance classes and doing math, which I never thought I would do. And it's one of the reasons I went to law school, but here we are. And yeah, so that's kind of my introduction.
Great. Thank you, you guys. Okay, so I have sketched out some kind of topics for conversation. And so I might throw some questions to all of you, and then I might kind of say, oh, well, let's hear from the lawyer or the law school people, and then let's hear from the non-law school people. So the first question I have for everyone is, were there any classes that you took as a political science major that helped you make your decision? Like, oh, after I took this class, I knew this is what I wanted to do, or this helped me make the decision as to which direction I should go. And yeah, anyone who wants to, if your answer is no, that's fine. You can just say no, and we'll go to the next person.
I'm going to make a second plug for Dr. Christensen's con law class. It was a beast, but honestly, if you are trying to figure out if you want to do law school, that is a really good class because, like Miranda said, the tests you take, the class discussion, you're literally reading cases for every class period. It is a very good approximation of what law school is like, and it was busy, and I did very few of the readings technically. But it made me realize, like, oh, I actually am interested in this. I actually do like this. And then I took 328 and had the PhD crisis, but here I am anyway.
It's con law, constitutional.
Constitutional law, if you can swing it, rights and immunities is much more interesting than structures. So
And that's also by Dr. Christensen?
Dr. Christensen teaches it. I know some other professors do.
I think Professor Cruson, it also, that is a recent hire. He's like new as of last year. I think he teaches some of these classes too. So he might be a person to look at as well.
For me, it was definitely data visualization, which Dr. Goodliff took at the time.
I am teaching in the fall, so put a plug for
You
that.
should definitely. Yeah, Miranda had said it was hard. She still did really well too, but it was just so fun because you get to be really creative, making different graphs and learning how to portray information in like a unique and compelling way. Where I was like, oh, this is really fun. And for me, I really enjoyed the creative aspect, which I felt, I was a little concerned if I went to law school. There's so much structure and so much like rule following, and that wasn't really my vibe. But data viz helped a lot with that. Also, I would say any capstone class, I took, I think 3 capstones here, just because they were so fun. You just get to research and be creative, and they're very similar to like grad school classes, PhD classes. So if you liked your capstone, that might be a sign you would like your PhD.
Yeah, I'll add. I think that's a great strategy that people think like, oh, I take one capstone and that's all I can take. But if you like your capstone class, take another one. And those are kind of, I would say, the closest thing we have to what a graduate seminar in a PhD program. If you're kind of thinking like, do I want to get a PhD? Capstone classes are kind of the closest approximation we have in the department.
Yeah, I would echo. Data viz was when we knew you should do a PhD and we should not. Who here is everyone here a poli-sci student, like a poli-sci major? Is anyone not?
Some IR majors.
Okay,
right?
IR. Okay.
Do we have any non-poli-sci or IR? What is your major?
Biology major.
Ooh.
Oh, that's right. You're welcome to be here.
Every political science class I've taken, but I also love biology. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, do what you love. Do what you love.
PETA. Yeah. Or
So most of
maybe
you
not.
will take Poly 328, I would imagine, or something worse. Well, there's an economics
There's
equivalent.
an
that I
Econ
would-
388.
Yeah. That for me was really transformative. Like learning, like doing data analysis, and then like using that as a jumping off point to say like, I want to do more of this on poli-sci topics, or I'd actually like to do more of this, but like with a business focus. Like that, learning those skills sort of opened up the world to like, okay, like these are the kind of the paths I can go down now.
So Connor, would you say that the types of things you do in 328, like the memos, is that actually a close approximation to the type of work you did in consulting?
There were a lot of adjacencies, yeah. I mean, so like, as an example, like, I mean, like I'd work on a team of like a manager and 3 consultants, and we'd work with like a partner, and then we'd have like a counterpart on the client side who was usually like in the C-suite of a company, and like I would own a little work stream, and it would be to like do analytics on like X, Y, and Z and solve these questions, and like it was supplemented with like interviews and like pulling expert like information, but like at the end of the day it was very similar, like diving into the data, figuring out what it means, and then like based on the data writing up like this is what you should do. So actually, yeah, it's similar. I mean, we presented it in a PowerPoint instead of a memo,
Sure.
but like very similar. Yeah.
Okay, that's really interesting to know.
I pretty much just echo everything that's already been said. I think one thing that I'm really grateful that I did is I took 200 and 328 pretty early. I took them both my sophomore year. And I think that opened up a lot of doors. So I was able to take my capstone earlier. And for me, my capstone and data viz were classes where I was glad I had good friends in. I enjoyed the class, but I was like, I do not want to do this for the rest of my life. But I'm glad I had those experiences early. And then I started to take more of either the constitutional law class. I did a lot more like the classes through the pre-law program. There's like a law lecture series. You can be on like the law journal through the undergrad. And I found that I really liked all of those experiences. And I think if I was just trying to get kind of my core coursework out of the way, I'm not sure I would have had those same experiences or then internships that came from the classes that further solidified kind of where I was at.
Yeah, I'd probably echo most of that. Con law, super representative of it, like what you think a law school class would be, and then you get to law school and it's like not really like that because teachers are way more lax than Christensen. But no, that was a really good one. And one that I really enjoyed was like there was a class on the Supreme Court that Richard Davis used to teach, and now there's a new professor that teaches it.
I think it's Chris Cruson.
Yeah, and he seems cool. That class was interesting because you just learned about the Supreme Court, and that's where you learn like 17% of America thinks Judge Judy sits on the Supreme Court. So, yeah. And then 328 I think was dual purpose in how helpful it was. One, that's like the hardest I've ever had to work for a class. And as we were talking about earlier, I think that's maybe harder than I've had to work for any law school class, to be honest. So like if you really want to be diligent and learn how to do that for a class, that's a great way to do it. And then also just like Miranda said, it opens up so many opportunities in terms of like data and doing all of that, doing your capstone. And data is everything, as you probably know. Like I'm interning with the startup. Well, it's not a startup. It's more established now up in South Jordan. And like everything in Lehigh, it's all data. Like all these big buildings, all these new firms, it's all data analytics. It's all getting consumer data. Like data is everything. So 328, if you are interested in exploring that route, is like a really great first step going in that direction, I think. So. You'd have to check the
I'm not
registrar.
sure of the number, but I think the title of the class is just the Supreme Court.
The one by Cruson, I'm in it right now. It's Poly 312, American Judicial Politics.
Oh, okay. 312 is the number?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, great. Okay, I want to stick with the law school folks for a second. So Taylor, you in your original remarks mentioned kind of being involved in some extracurricular activities that kind of helped you or were law adjacent. Can you speak specifically about I think you said the law review? Is that something you were involved in?
Yeah, and also first off, like Miranda, I was in a lot of like Christina Carlston's like pre-law classes. They're also like super easy, like they're nothing like real law school classes.
They're helpful, but they're easy.
Yeah. Like looking back on it now, I'm like, man, that's like be so nice to be in something like that at this stage. But yeah, so I think one of the more interesting pre-law things that I did was I was involved with what's called the BYU Pre-Law Review. So for example, like all law schools have a journal that is for academic articles, and BYU has a really cool experience where they have an undergraduate version of that. In a sense, it's not exact, but it's kind of presents a really great opportunity for undergrads to get involved with legal writing and legal research. It's a great way to even start connecting with law professors in some sense, because normally they require you, at least when I was there, to meet with the professor. You basically spend a whole year writing an article. It's like super low pressure in terms of, like getting graded, but it's a really great experience to get your feet wet, start looking into legal things. I think one thing that's interesting is now legal academia is finally getting into like empirical data in the last couple of years. Even then, some of the papers are like just horrendous in the way they use it. It's kind of embarrassing. But yeah, the pre-law review, you can do 1 year as an author, and then if you want to try and apply for a board, you can do that another year. So I basically spent 2 years with the pre-law review. And yeah, that was a really fun one, being able to like associate just with people who were really thinking about law school, talking about the LSAT. Well, actually, talking about the LSAT and applications with other people is like the worst experience of my life. But just trying to be in that area and get in that model of thinking kind of got me like really chomping at the bit to go into law school.
So who is the person that is the kind of contact person for the pre-law review? Who would a person reach out to?
Yeah, so technically Christina Carlson is over it.
Okay.
But then it's basically run by the student board. So,
Got it.
but yeah, I would reach out to Christina about it first if you have questions, and that's a great way to get in touch. But you would have to carve out a whole year for it. So.
And there's like a legal studies track through poli-sci, and a lot of these like pre-law classes can count towards your poli-sci degree, even though they're a lot easier than a poli-sci class. So like that's kind of why I started doing them. I'm like, oh, it's an easy class, but it can count if you're on the legal studies track.
And Miranda, can you talk a little more? Because you mentioned the kind of these pre-law classes, the pre-law center. Can you give us a little sense of like what that is? How do you kind
Totally.
of plug into that?
Yeah, so it's over at the Wilk. It's the kind of like the second floor,
You know where, like-
the third floor above the Kukri.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
above the Kukri over in that area.
So it's the Pre-Professional Advisement Center. So they do advisement for pre-med, like pre-dental, and for pre-law. The person in charge of the Pre-Law Advisement Center is Christina Carlson, who is amazing. I'm pretty sure we all, like, I keep in touch with her still. Like, we've all had really good experiences with her. And she is like a really big advocate for students. Like, I remember just going in and being kind of confused or not sure where to go to law school or applications, and she's just really helpful. And she's the one that teaches all of the pre-law classes, basically. So there's like a law lecture series. I took one that was, I can't remember, a 2-credit law class. There's the pre-law review. I was on the pre-law student, I was the vice president of the pre-law student association, so I got credit for that. And then that association kind of we planned a lot of different events, and we worked with a lot of like attorneys. We worked with BYU Law School a lot. So that was really helpful for me kind of my last year as I was deciding where to go to be exposed to a lot of the different schools.
And so then, Jacqueline, are there any other kind of like adjacent resources that you found useful while you were at BYU? So kind of not necessarily the core poli-sci courses, but kind of things that were around that you were, that you took advantage of, or that students might want to avail themselves of.
Just in like any context or in the law
Sure.
context?
Or in any context,
okay.
or, well, you know better than I do.
The first thing is talk to professors. Mind you, a lot of the political science professors very intentionally chose to get PhDs and not go to law school, so they will have a certain perspective on it, but not a bad one. I got really good advice from professors when I was talking to them because I had come into my undergrad thinking, I'm going to go to law school.
Can you name names? Like, which ones were helpful?
You're asking a lot of me. I don't remember. I talked to Dr. Karchner, who gave me some good advice. Why am I blanking?
We're forgettable. It's okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Anyway, I am terrible at names. But you can get, because even if you come into undergrad with one idea of what you're going to do, part of the college experience is getting exposure to everything. And so you will see other things that you might want to do, and it might be a better fit for you. And talking to professors is a really good route for that. And exploring different options is a really good route for that. I did a study abroad after 328. I was planning on taking 328 and then going to law school, and then I was tired, so I didn't. I did a study abroad doing survey research, realized I didn't like it very much. I did a fellowship with the Global Politics Lab, which was in this building. I used to live here. I love the Kennedy Center. And that was really interesting. Also made me realize I didn't like research that much. I TA'd and I realized I like teaching but not research. So, that's my problem. I just take the opportunities that present themselves. There will be a lot of things that show up. I got a random email about the study abroad and said, sure, why not? You'll get job offers. You'll get opportunities to do research for professors and take advantage of what shows up. Like Taylor was saying, the BYU political science is incredible. The professors are incredible. And the best way to figure out what you're going to do is to try and to test it out. And I'm glad I got the opportunity to confirm that law school was the right choice for me, because it's really hard. And I am glad I am here knowing it's the right fit. So.
Awesome. Taylor, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on in the sense that what I found also super helpful outside of like the core classes was I had 2 friends that I made because end of my sophomore year, speaking to Jacqueline, taking advantage of all opportunities, one of the BYU law professors was like nice enough to reach out looking for like undergrad RAs. So I like applied off of like right after like the worst semester of like my entire undergrad experience. Like the man had like no reason bringing me on, but he did. And I made these 2 friends there who were like also going to be pre-law, and just like having that like group around you of people who are like super driven, and like we would regularly schedule to like study together. It was like senior years, like all we would talk about, and having that around was like super helpful in terms of not only like exploring and talking more about law school, because they knew like way more about like everything about it than I did, but then like those random opportunities. I think the chance to RA for the professor was literally in like one of Christina's emails in like April of winter semester, and it ended up spanning into like this whole 2-year like working with this professor, making these great friends, and it was like a really cool experience. So yeah, just kind of adding on to what Jacqueline said.
Great. So to the non-lawyers, I know both of you, I think, had experience working as either a TA or an RA as in the political science department. Can you talk about how either of those experiences helped you decide against law school and towards the path that you chose?
We just got to leave it, yeah. Definitely, yeah. I had a chance to do like TA for a couple different classes, 328, Data Viz, RAing as well with a couple different professors. And I would say if you get the chance to be a research assistant, it really does give you a taste for what grad school can be like. So yeah, I would definitely highly recommend it. There is actually one other thing I want to bring up really quickly before I forget. Can I bring it up?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. This has been on my mind, and I would, pinch myself if I didn't get to say it. But one of the most motivating parts for me when I was thinking about going to law school is I wanted to make a lot of money. And I think if any of you don't want to make a lot of money, you're crazy. And like, of course, it's going to be a part of our decision. I thought, I don't know exactly what I want to do, but I know in my mind that lawyers make a ton of money, and so that's just a nice, easy way to go about it. And I've learned a couple things, in large part from my law school friends, is that one, just because you're a lawyer does not guarantee you're going to make a lot of money. You can make a lot of money, but you can also
Go to the public defender's office.
Yeah, but so if that's your biggest motivation, I would just say maybe take a step back and realize that there's so many other ways that might be more fun or engaging for you, where you can make just as much, if not more, money. For PhDs, for example, if you don't want to go into academia, that's becoming more and more common. There are 2 people from my program who graduated last year who are now government consultants for Meta, formerly Facebook, and they make like $350K a year. My professors at Berkeley, the highest one gets paid just under $700,000. Like what? Isn't that insane? Yeah, Paul Pearson, look him up.
We are not making that much money here.
But
I just want to confirm that to all of you, okay?
But this is just to say that I'm like, oh my gosh, I can make just as much money as my like high lawyer friends, if not more, and I'm doing something that's way more fun for me. And like, Connor as well can probably speak. At McKinsey, there's a lot of money to be made, a lot of great opportunity. All I'm saying, I just want to be very clear that like, if you're afraid you're not going to make a lot of money unless you go to law school, realize that there's like just as many other amazing ways that you can get just as much money. So anyway, and that was my biggest motivation for law school. And I'm so glad I didn't fall through with that, because that would be terrible to be doing a job I didn't want just for like a decent salary. I don't know. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Thanks.
I know already.
Okay. I can also talk to that, and then I also have a thought that I've had in my mind that I'd love to share. But yeah, so I was a TA for 328 with you, I believe, and 200, and also an RA for a couple professors. And actually, like, There was an RA position that I had. It was working for Dr. Priest and Dr. Karpowitz, managing sort of like a field study they were doing. And I was sort of like overseeing they were doing the big thinking, and I was like telling like the RAs what to do and typing stuff in the computer. And that like was like kind of like a project management crash course that I never thought I'd have like within the poli-sci department. And it was like a super cool learning experience, and it helped me realize like I actually get a lot of energy from like being told like build this and make it work, and kind of like putting things together and putting processes in place and like trial and error and a little bit of data stuff, but like and a little bit of like project management, and like that brought me a lot of energy and made me really excited. And so that's like why I went down a management consulting path, because it was an experience that I had RAing that I thought mirrored a career elsewhere, and it kind of did. That was really cool. One thing I would love to say, like another, I think, law school misconception is that if you go to law school, like the path is so clear. And like you go to law school,
They're all shaking their heads.
This is what I thought. This is what I thought. And I'm now realizing that's not true, and the path is also clear in other ways. So like I thought I'd do 3 years of law school at a good place, and then I'll go into like I'll work at a law firm, and like there you do 7 years at the law firm, then you're a partner, and like it's really clear. I've come to find out, first of all, like getting that job is not easy. And second of all, like there's actually a lot of fun to be had in trying new things and taking some risks and jumping from one to the next. And there is like clear recruitment paths for many different companies out of BYU. And so like sometimes like yes, the law school path can be clear for the first couple of years after you graduate, but like there are lots of other ways that you can kind of like, if you have an appetite for risk, or even if you don't, like find really awesome opportunities.
Thank you. Okay, I have one last question for the whole panel, and then we'll open it up to questions from the class. So let's start. I think we started over here with Jacqueline at the beginning, so we'll start over here with Taylor. And what I'd like you to say is, looking back, is there anything you would do differently in your undergraduate experience at BYU, and what would it be? And if the answer is no, you lived out the ideal, perfect undergraduate experience.
Yeah, that's a good question. If I was to do anything differently, I would have tried harder in high school and not gone to BYU Idaho first. But that might be like kicking it a little too far back, because I basically lost like my freshman year to like the frozen tundra of Rexburg. But
Rexburg's a good place and lots of
it's fun. Actually, I have a lot of great
know.
things to say about Rexburg. It's just like, yeah, that's a whole other that's a whole other panel. To be
But
honest.
we're
This
not.
is not going to be accessible to BYUI students, right?
It might be. Oh, no. And we love you all.
Yeah, BYUI alum right here, 3 semesters. Yeah, if I was to do anything differently, one thing that I would do is I would probably, and if I had the opportunity to do so, I would have done this more, would be to knock out 200 and 328 as early as possible. Because there was like a lot of cool data classes that I wanted to take. I just didn't have time for in my schedule by the time I got to my senior year, because I was trying to knock out the last couple of required ones, knock out the ones in the track that I needed. Like I know data viz is like this, like kind of portrayed as like this nightmare class follow up to 328, which I'm not denying, but I would have like really have liked to like advanced into like that next level of data skills. And I was just never able to, because it just never lined up with my schedule with the timing I had left. So that would probably be, if I could do it over, I would take more data. Yeah, that's probably what I would say.
Great, thanks. Miranda?
I think overall I'm like happy with how I did undergrad. I think I really liked what Jacqueline said of just like take every opportunity, and what everyone has been saying about like how truly incredible BYU Poli-Sci is, and all of the experiences I had, whether it was TAing and RAing. I almost wish I would have kind of let myself maybe not go so fast through school and maybe do something like a study abroad, or, you know, taking out a student loan to go to London on a study abroad. Just kind of enjoyed myself, because I think I did push myself really hard, and then I went straight to law school. So I think maybe I also would have done a gap year I've thought about too, and just working. Even if you know you're going to go to law school, I find that like a lot of the people that came from having a year of work experience can be a lot more prepared and have a lot more to add to law school. So I think that I would just say like take advantage of every opportunity, really try to do research with professors. I think TAing is amazing. There's so many amazing opportunities, even through the Kennedy Center. And I just wish I would have even taken more advantage, even if that meant a little more time. And I wish I would have like rushed a little bit less.
Thanks. Connor?
Yeah. I think I would, like, I wish I would have given myself the allowance to, like, do more variety. I thought that I had to have, like, a really, like I needed to, like, all my classes and, like, all my internships needed to, like, line up and, like, be in this kind of the same vein so that, like, I had a really strong reason to do whatever career I wanted to at the end. And, like, that, as I, like, didn't get an internship that I wanted or whatever, like, came to realize that actually, like, when you are sort of telling your story to an employer when you're starting to interview, like, being able to show a really cool, multidimensional, like, diverse, like, I did, like, I worked with refugees, but then I also, like, worked in a bank, and I did this type of research, but then I also, like, ran a club that was very different. Like, that kind of well-roundedness and how you're able to kind of form that into a clear narrative actually is really cool, and a lot of employers love that and think it's super interesting. So I thought I had to have, like, poli-sci classes that all kind of made sense, and, like, internships that reflected what I did in my coursework, and actually, like, no, like, to Jacqueline's point again, take every opportunity. The only thing you have to do is, like, think about how, like, what story that tells about you, and I'm sure you'll be able to think of a good one.
I think for me, the biggest thing I would do differently is anytime I had a family member and I told them I was a poli-sci major, they would always say, well, what are you going to do with that degree? You know, and I wish I could go back and just say, you know what, I can do a lot. We can do a lot with these degrees. And yes. So I hope that all of you, like, feel that too. There's so many options if you're poli-sci, IR, something related, beyond just the scope of, like, law school or nothing. I mean, law school is a great option if that's really what you want to do, but I that's what I would do differently, is I would try to give myself a little more space for that.
To the point of taking it slower and all of that, I would have taken a lot better care of my mental health, honestly. I took a bit of a pause after 328 because I was very tired, and then I TA'd for 328, did another year of school, it was great. But I ran too fast during undergrad. I wanted to get out in 3 years and go to law school because, heaven forbid, I graduate from law school older than 26, that's how old I currently am, by the way. I will be graduating at older than 26, thank goodness. And I made it through undergrad fine, and then I got to law school and I experienced severe burnout. So getting that stuff figured out early, if you can, is what I would recommend. It took me till 25 to figure out a lot of my mental health stuff because I hadn't even thought about it. It took a long time for me to get good habits in place that helped give me the resiliency to deal with school, because whatever you end up doing after graduating, PhD, working really busy job, being in law school, even just like if COVID's proved anything, life itself throws a lot of curveballs. And so take the time in undergrad where you're still busy, but you have more time. And you have, unless you're married with kids already, fewer obligations to figure yourself out, to figure out what you enjoy, the hobbies you like, the things that give you energy, so that when you get into law school or grad school or job or just life happens, you will be ready to handle it, because it will happen. So.
Great. Thank you, you guys. I really appreciate that. We can do some applause. Yeah. Those were great answers. Okay. Let's do some questions, and I'll just run the microphone for people. So we'll start here, and we'll come over this way.
Matt, could you talk to us about the direction you want to go with your PhD and kind of what that program's been like?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm a first year PhD, so just doing a lot of like math classes right now and some research. Yeah, it's fun. It can be fun. But yeah, my hope, I'm actually not married to the idea of academia. Sorry, Dr. Barber, but like definitely an open window. Academia is pretty tough to get into. And if, you know, a top 10, 15 program, you're getting paid, you know, 6 figures, but otherwise it's a little more dismal. But so
I also make enough money to live comfortably.
Look at that.
I'm not sleeping in a tent.
You're so poor. No, it's okay.
This man has a house in Utah County.
Yeah, he does. He does.
In Utah County.
Yeah, so I'm really interested in the private sector as well, which I think when I was talking to professors here at BYU about PhDs, a lot of them kind of told me that it's looked down upon, but I would say it's changing really quickly in the PhD world. Like most of my colleagues who are PhD students are not planning on academia. They want to work for the UN or start their own market research firms or work in tech. Which is really, really exciting. And what's great, at least at Berkeley, they have a whole office where they help you find internships, different opportunities. So if you like research, if you want to get a grad degree and get paid for it, for most PhDs, after 2 years, they give you a master's and you progress. So you could also just finish after 2 years with a master's that you didn't have to pay for. So like some pretty great options, in my opinion.
So I feel like throughout my career considerations, I've been playing this game of like the floor is lava, except the floor is data analysis, and I am a recovering Poly 328 student. I had a lot of really incredible skills in that class, and I really value those skills, and they're all kind of like starting to slide out of my brain. And I know I'm going to need those skills later on. I know I'm going to have to like kind of like stop pretending that it's lava. So do I have to just kind of like plug my nose and take data viz, or is there like, are there other options where I can like, you know, kind of continue to kind of lock in those data skills that don't necessarily stay in my brain as well, because I don't think numbers super awesome.
I'm going to answer this question.
Okay.
Because I'm going to be teaching data viz in the summer term and then again in the fall semester. And my plan is to dramatically revamp the course. And so there are some people who have had some traumatic experiences in the class in the past, but my version will be very different. But we are going to, and that will hopefully kind of refresh many of the things that you learned in 328. It's also not going to be required that you have taken 328. So we will presume that you have not had 328 in that class, okay? So that's what I'll say for that. The other thing I would say is there are lots of other classes that I would call like 328 adjacent, in that they use the skills that you learned in 328, but that's not the primary focus of the class. So lots of capstone classes are like that. The survey research class, the experimental methods class that Dr. Priest teaches. These are classes that will use your 328 skills, but they will not be focused entirely on data analytics. So that's what I would say in answer to your question. Sorry, that one I just had to kind of take over.
And I would add one more thing. In my experience, and I've done a lot of data analytics in multiple jobs, unless you are a data scientist or you've been hired after a PhD to either do research or like data work, like 98% of jobs are not going to contain data analysis that is harder than 328.
Totally.
Like, so it will say, like, the job description will say, like, we want someone who's comfortable with data analytics. And, like, what that means is that you need to be able to take the mean of a number from an Excel spreadsheet. Like, or you need to be able to, like, calculate compound interest, and there's an Excel formula that does that for you. Like, it's, data analytics is a buzzword, and it, like, captures a huge variety of activities, and the majority of them are like spending, like, of your day 10% is working in data, and that's like very common. There's hope, everyone.
But we designed 328 intentionally to cover 98% of what you might need, and that's so that you are better trained than undergraduates, I would argue, at any other university in the country. You're getting better data training than the undergraduates at Berkeley and Stanford and Harvard and Princeton. And so that, I think, is a really valuable thing that the department has explicitly decided to do for you. Let's take one more question, because I think did you have your hand up? Was there another hand? Yeah. Oh, okay. I'll come over there.
So I know only one of you is currently employed, but what did you? Sorry,
I'm working part-time.
I'm just shaming you guys. I know only one of you is currently employed, but what did you do to prepare to like enter the market, especially during COVID? Because I think you switched jobs during COVID. And then what are the rest of you doing right now to prepare yourselves to take on big boy jobs?
And big girl jobs.
So I entered the job market in 2019. So first job, not COVID. Second job, I mean, the job market's incredible right now. Like, it's amazing. It's never been better. So if you're graduating in 2 months, that's awesome. How did I prepare to enter the job market? So I think, like, back to what I said before, like having a really strong story as to why your profile's great for a company, and like that should include like the data and analytics classes that you've done, your internships, and why what you learned from that makes you an awesome asset. And like having that story pretty well thought out, I think is like one of the best things you can do. I switched jobs because a friend who'd recently left consulting posted on his LinkedIn, and it looked interesting, and I was tired of my job. So it was very common sense. But I would say right now it's like a great time to look for work.
Anyone else want to
With
chime in?
Law, I think I have a job lined up. You have a job lined up for after graduation. Is yours probably going to be an after graduation job? Absolutely. Yeah, so in law school, all I'd say is crush your first year, get the best grades you can, because that's really all that matters for your job. For me, it was 1 semester, because we had pass-fail second semester. But in law school, you get a job really early, so you'll be starting to look for a full-time job your first year. There's really great career services, but it does mean you kind of need to go in knowing what direction you're headed.
You get a job really early if you go a certain route.
Definitely.
I've had to constantly remind myself that I would hate big law with every particle of my being, not for a sellout reason, for I couldn't do it. Which isn't to say it's not a good fit for people. I just have ADHD, and if I'm doing the same thing for too long, I will go insane. So, anyway, if you're going the larger law route, you will be applying to your jobs first year, beginning of second year. I remember everybody getting their job announcements and being very stressed. If you're not going that route, applications come later. So like I'm hoping, I don't want to stay in Utah County, but I'm hoping my summer at the public defender's office can open some doors at other places. But yeah, it depends on the route you're taking for law school. The one that they make a big deal of is the get a job after your first summer route. But there's more than just that, so.
Yeah, I guess the last law school comment on this is that I'm just taking classes that are going to be useful for where I'm going. Really short story, I originally thought I was going to go into law school and I was going to die in the courtroom, litigating in front of Judge Judy.
That's what I'm going to do. I'm very excited.
But then I did some of that for a summer and I was like, I think I really hate this. So now I have the position of if I never end up in the courtroom ever in the rest of my career, totally happy. But yeah, so now I'm just taking classes that are more directed in with that career, or that are more aligned with that career trajectory. So I'm in a federal taxation class, corporate finance, learning how to read balance sheets, and just doing things that will further and give me a great foundation to work with when I get into that field. So yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. It's just so great to have you all. Hopefully this was helpful to you guys, and let's give our panel a round of applause.